And good afternoon slash morning, everybody, and welcome to the live virtual launch of the Aussie Backyard Bird Count. My name is Sean Dooley. I am the National Public Affairs Manager at Birdlife Australia, and I'd like to welcome all of you backyard bird counters today to what will be for Birdlife is a very unique event. We haven't tried something like this, so hopefully the technology won't get the better of us and we will have a very wonderful afternoon lined up for you. Normally, as with so many things this year, we're doing things differently. Normally, for the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, which is now in its 7th year, we would do a launch event, be that a pop-up backyard in Melbourne or Sydney, or travelling around Australia, having events at the Botanic Gardens to do bird watching. But what we're going to do today is, in some ways, possibly even better, because we are going to check in right across Australia to see people, a lot of our fantastic ambassadors, the chief counters, and a lot of our brilliant BirdLife supporters. We're going to check in with them around the country to see what they're seeing in their backyards and what they hope to count. And hopefully you'll join us and be inspired to get out there and help with what is pretty much Australia's biggest citizen science project, the Aussie Backyard Bird Count. Now, before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I appear to you, and from wherever you are. Where I'm coming from is Boonwurrung country in the land of the Kulin Nation in the Melbourne area. And I would like to pay my respects to the members of the Boonwurrung and the Kulin Nations, and thank them for the custodianship that they had of our natural environment and our birds for tens of thousands of years. And unfortunately, the way that we have treated the Australian landscape over the last 230 years has left a lot to be desired. But there are so many people that we know from our work at BirdLife Australia who really care about the legacy that they leave, a legacy of a rich and varied bird life that can thrive, that hopefully events like this is a meeting of like minds, and that we can do justice to those that came before us and left us with such a rich and varied legacy of magnificent bird life. Hopefully you're all joining in, and we're getting people from right around the country. It's an incredibly exciting event for us at BirdLife Australia. Last year, the 6th Aussie Backyard Bird Count, we had over 88,000 people get involved right around the country, which was just such a tremendous celebration of Australia's birds, that people in their backyards, be it in the middle of a large city or right in the outback, were getting together and sharing their passion, telling us what they saw. And this year, well, last year we counted 3.4 million birds. This year we are hoping to go even higher, because the more records that we get, the more that you count and tell us what you're seeing, the more important the information and the more valuable it is, the scientific information that BirdLife Australia can use to help map out what's going on with our most common birds, the birds that we share our lives with. And this year has been, well, does it need to be said? It's been a rather remarkable year. It's certainly been one in which we've had a lot of time across Australia to reflect on what's important to us. And we've had a lot of time to think about what is happening with our country. And one of the things, right from the start of the year, we had the bushfires, which devastated so many millions and millions of hectares and killed hundreds of millions of birds. And from then on, it's been a horror of a year. But the one bright spot that I found in the year for myself is the birds. Even I've been in Melbourne. I'm coming to you live from the Boonwurrung country in Melbourne, and confined essentially to my backyard, to my house for pretty much the whole of the last 6 months. But every day I've had, even though I'm in suburban Melbourne, I've had a myriad of fantastic birds showing up. I like to think of them as messengers of the messengers from nature. they're the messengers from the outside world that are coming and reminding me with their visual displays and their calls that the world is continuing, the world will go on. There is a world outside our little bubbles and hubs. And birds have this innate ability to connect us to nature and to each other, as events like this will show. So for me, I know certainly in my darkest moments throughout 2020, it's often been birds that have given me that spark of light to feel hopeful. And I know that's happened to a lot of people around Australia. At Birdlife Australia, we have been inundated with people wanting to share their bird experiences, wanting to ask us what birds they're seeing, wanting to know that the birds are okay. And so there's a lot of resources that Birdlife Australia has put into trying to reach out to people to help them during this time enjoy their birding at home, so that we can have so that we can have those moments that have lifted our spirits this year, that we can continue to have that for us and our children into future generations. It's as I said, this is a new venture for Birdlife Australia. Hopefully you're able to hear me fine, coming from my little office in Melbourne. And I'm getting the thumbs up from my amazing helper here, Jo Feely from Birdlife Australia, who's put this all together. She probably won't bring herself up onto the screen, but we couldn't be doing this without her. So I just want to acknowledge her first up. And the way it's going to work, we have over the next couple of hours, we're going to go right around the country, visit our chief counters in their backyards, visit a whole lot of fascinating and wonderful people who love birds. And we're just going to have a lot of fun over the next couple of hours. We're streaming out over several platforms, so you don't need to sit with us for the entire time, but you can always check in. We'll probably be going here till well after 2 o'clock because we've got so much ground to cover, so many birds to cover. But there is the comment section on this that if you comment, I can see your comments, and Jo will be monitoring them as well. And there'll be a lot of comments coming in, but hopefully we'll be able to answer them along the way. And then in the last 20 minutes or so, at the end of this session, around 2 o'clock, we'll be able to go in depth with your comments about the backyard bird count, sharing the birds that you're seeing here, and just sharing the event today. And already I can see that we're getting people saying hi from Perth. We're getting people, Beck from Shoalhaven, which I was at Shoalhaven last year for their bird fest to launch the backyard bird count. So it's a beautiful thing that birds can unite us right across the country. And I'm just going to shut my door here because we have the joys of broadcasting from home. About to have a 5-month-old COVID puppy bounding in. So hopefully we won't get too many interruptions like that. Now, before we start talking about the backyard bird count, I thought I'd like to introduce who Birdlife Australia is. For those of you who don't know, we've been running the backyard bird count for the last 7 years. And Birdlife Australia, for those who don't know us, is Australia's national bird conservation organisation. And we stand together with over 180,000 supporters from around Australia to try and work together to prevent the extinction of Australia's birds. We're part of the BirdLife International Network. We are the Australian affiliate with them. And we work with people who love birds, be it just recreational bird watchers, researchers, academics. We work with government. We're not funded by government, but we work with government and research institutions to monitor and research, especially threatened bird populations, and to work in practical on-ground conservation to try and save those birds. And today I wanted to introduce, to start things off, one of the birds we've been working on recently, trying to help it stop heading towards extinction. This bird is one of my absolute favourite birds, probably my top 2 favourite birds. It's a bird called the Regent Honeyeater. It's a critically endangered woodland bird that's found that was once found in flocks of thousands right across southeastern Australia. However, due to past habitat clearance and continuing habitat loss, including from the bushfires, which last year burnt several of the key breeding known nesting sites of Regent Honeyeaters, we estimate that the population of Regent Honeyeater is only around 350 birds left. So BirdLife Australia has been working on Regent Honeyeaters for probably the last 20 to 30 years, trying to make sure we halt that slide towards extinction. And I can report to you that I have good news. I can report to you that this year that as we come out of lockdown around Australia, there are more Regent Honeyeaters in the wild, thanks to the work of BirdLife Australia and its partners, than there were at the beginning of lockdown. And I'd just like to share with you a video of some of the recent work we've done, including a release of captive bred birds from our partners at Taronga Zoo. So here we go with our first bit of technological wizardry. So hopefully this will play for you. Now, that was just a very brief, very short video of what some of the work we've been doing with the captive bred release. And it's part of a whole series of projects that we've been working on at BirdLife Australia with partners in New South Wales and Victoria in particular, including covenanting properties for conservation purposes, to protect the best woodland left for Regent Honeyeaters, revegetating key sites, removal of birds that are threatening Regent Honeyeaters, and also the captive release. And to tell us more about that is somebody who was actually present at the captive release, and somebody who is a great friend of BirdLife Australia. She actually got to release the birds from the tent. And that person, I'll just bring her on in a minute, is Chris Barth, one of our most respected television journalists. You would have seen her around the country on Channel 7 and on the 10 network now, bringing the news to you, and with the Sunday night program, and currently she appears occasionally on the project and hosts the 10 weekend news bulletin. Chris is also an enthusiastic convert to bird watching, and she's joining us now from her Birds Are Us, Nerds Are Us farm in the Lower Hunter Valley, just the road from where that Regent Honeyeater release happened. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. And have you counted any Regent Honeyeaters yet?
Well, I've got stringy barks in flower. I know that they want stringy barks. So I looked this morning, but sadly no Regent Honeyeaters. Would have been pretty excited if I'd said some.
Yeah, I imagine so. So you were at the captive release of those birds. Can you tell everybody what it was like to see these beautiful birds go out into the wild for the first time?
Yeah, I love the way you said that I got to release them from the tent like I was camping with Regent Honeyeaters. So I'm not sure I should explain what that means. So these birds have been part of a captive breeding program in conjunction with Taronga and BirdLife Australia and a bunch of government agencies. So there was a really big team that put this together, and it was the culmination of a lot of work. It was kind of rushed through, though, because I know Mick Roderick, who's the woodland bird specialist for BirdLife up in the Hunter, had found the perfect site that had everything happening. So it had great habitat for these birds to breed in. It had a lot of food, and everything was flowering, and it was going to be ongoing flowering. So they decided that they release these birds. So what they did was they brought them up from Taronga, and they were in tents so that they could acclimatise to where they were. Obviously, it's a little bit further north of Sydney, and it was still reasonably cool. So they needed to make sure the birds were comfortable in the environment. So they were in tents, like big tents, not little tents, but reasonably tents. And they could see in and out. So they had feed that was being supplied to them from Taronga, and they spent a few days just getting used to the sounds of the area and getting used to the environment and the temperature. And then once everybody thought that the birds were good to go and they were quite comfortable, basically what it involved for me was, like, it was amazing, to even see these birds because they're so rare, but to get up close and just see what jewels they are. That the colours really surprised me. I don't think photography really does them justice. There's brilliant gold on their wings, and they're just gorgeous little birds. So basically we crept up to the tents and slowly unzipped them, and then gently put down the fly of the tent, so the screen of the tent, so it didn't scare the birds, and just step back very slowly. And I thought that they would explode out of the tent. And instead I'm going, come on, freedom, go. And so they sort of slowly flew out of the tent and just flew off into the bush. And then we spent a couple of hours trying to track them, because I know Dean Ingwersen from Birdlife had painstakingly built almost like these transmitter backpacks, so that you can imagine how light they were for a tiny little bird, so that we could track the birds and see where they were going. So we spent a couple of hours sort of going through the bush, and it was amazing to see them out in the wild, like on the bushes, and hear them calling. Their call beautiful as well. And again, it took a while to get used to that, because I know with bird watching, one thing that I've learnt is that you hear, you see with your ears. Basically, you'll hear birds first before you see them most of the time. And so there was this strange call, and I was looking at Mick. We're in the middle of the bush, and I was going, "What's that?" And he said, "It's a Regent Honeyeater." Well, I haven't heard it before. They've got quite a sweet call. So yeah, it was an amazing thing to be part of, and it was amazing to think that there's a real possibility that these birds could start boosting populations in New South Wales at least. I mean, I guess that's the goal. When you hear Gould talk about huge flocks of these birds back in the day, you just think, oh, what have we done? But I guess to survive, we really have to hang on to our woodland habitat, and unfortunately, that's where most of us are building in Australia. We're building through all that dry, sclerophyll, beautiful woodland forest, and we've got to come to some sort of compromise so that we can retain the habitat. So that it's great that we can boost the populations of these birds, but we've got to give them somewhere to live.
And also, just for those at home, and I think you know this too, Chris, the research team from Birdlife that spent months tracking the birds once they were released managed to also locate, because of that tracking, some wild birds in the same area. And we, you do know this, Chris, because we did last week, where we got the news that there's been at least 3 nests of wild Regent Honeyeaters found by our researchers. That's why I can safely say there's going to be more Regent Honeyeaters in the wild post-lockdown than there were before. There's the birds from the release that have survived, and also these nests that we've discovered. And it was such a thrill to find that out at the event that we're on. Like, literally, it was all front page sort of news. And so they're around. I can hear in your background, this for me today is like, I'm going virtual birding, and I hope everyone else is coming too. I've been here in Melbourne in my 5K zone for so many months now, and I know all the birds personally, but I can hear, can you hear some birds in the background there? Am I right? Is that an oriole calling away?
So we've had, I did my count this morning. We had a bit of rain overnight, so everyone was a bit slow to get going this morning. So there wasn't as much around. I was going, come on, where are the gangs? Where are the glossy blacks? We had one gang turn up, but, we usually have a lot more than that. But, yeah, there's been an oriole calling all day. I think he's lonely, looking for love somewhere. There's cry birds you can hear in the background at the moment. Near the house, we've got sort of a cleared area to try and make ourselves bushfire safe. I can sort of show you. So this is sort of heaven here for noisy miners, because they love this sort of habitat where there's cleared habitat trees. So they're kind of the bully boys in my backyard. They scare everything else away. They were having a bit of a war with blue-faced honeyeaters before here. And then
right.
if I go over here, oh, here we go. Here's my wood ducks. So I don't know whether you can see them just beyond. They're there. I don't know. I'll try and get closer. I don't know how to turn camera around because I'm a bit. Hang on.
I think I can see.
Here we go.
So that's brilliant. So, you know, this is what we want from people.
From Birdlife. No.
To send in what they see in their backyard or their local green space, wherever, the local park, the local wetland, because all of this right across the country, we build up this jigsaw of birds. And you spend your time between the farm and also when you're reading the news, you're in Sydney in an apartment.
Well, actually, I'm commuting back to Sydney these days. I'm thank you, COVID, but I'm living at the farm.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
you're going to stop at the apartment just to do a bird count from the balcony? Because you can.
Well, I'll have to. Yeah. Well, that's dominated by rainbow lorikeets and sulphur-crested cockatoos, which are massive urban invaders in Sydney. Actually, to be honest, we've barely seen sulphur-crested cockatoos here. We're almost 2 hours north of Sydney, and this year we've seen more sulphur-crested cockatoos here than ever before, and more galahs than ever before. So we usually have every other kind of cockatoo except those. I'm scared that the sulphur-cresteds are going to dominate the hollows and get rid of our beautiful gangs and our glossy blacks, because they seem to be a little bit more aggressive than the gangs. So I'm hoping that they leave some room for our gangs to breed.
It's interesting. I know that your place was very, very close and threatened for several weeks by the huge Gospers Mountain fire. And we've lost so much habitat that it's going to be a fascinating year to do the backyard bird count, because we're getting all these birds moving around. Like perhaps the cockies that you're getting now might normally this time of year be breeding in the forest. And, you know, so but we don't know that for sure. It's only with things like this where we get lots of surveys from all around the country that we'll be able to analyse what's happening and see how the impact of the bushfires affected the bird distribution and the bird numbers. We know we've lost a lot, but what about those survivors? So I'd ask everyone, if you're on a rural property, if you're on the edges of town or even in the middle of the city, please submit your counts. Even if you think I only get a couple of rainbow lorikeets, you know, noisy miners, sparrows, it's not that interesting. It actually is. We need all of those pixels to build up a great picture of what's happening, a snapshot of what's happening with our birds this year. So thank you, Chris, for joining us. It's been brilliant to speak to you. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to make my own bird list from the background of noises I hear from we cross to, and see if it can get my backyard bird list.
I'm sorry I couldn't get the rock stars going for you. You know, I could see if I can summon up the gangs, the glossy blacks and the lyrebirds. They're kind of the rock stars around here. And occasionally the oddcitella, but they're not here now.
Well, and this is the thing, in the areas that are unburnt, all of those birds were really severely impacted. The work of Australia after the bushfires to assess the damage to the distribution, the impacts of the fires. Certainly lyrebirds for the first time ever may become threatened because of these fires, and glossy blacks and gangs. So it's really important for us at BirdLife to find out where the survivors are, so that we can start to plan how we help them recover as the bush regenerates. So thank you very much, Chris. It's a brilliant way to kick off the day, and thanks for your support. And we will be enjoy the bird week. Enjoy the bird camp.
Have a good time, everyone.
Thank you. That was Chris Barth, who was a recent convert to birding in the last few years because of her son who loved it, and she had to get just was forced into becoming a bird nerd, but has embraced it and has been such a brilliant and wonderful supporter of BirdLife Australia, one of our many supporters. Okay, now we will, in 1 minute, the thing, before I go to our next guest, which is a pre-record, I'd just like to say the work that we do through our Woodland Birds program is replicated right across all the different types of Australian birds. We have a coastal birds program. We have seabird interest groups. We have a threatened mallee woodland birds program. We have a Save Our Species Preventing Extinctions program. We have a program working with, especially with Indigenous ranger groups and Indigenous communities in particular, but also other local communities to protect our key biodiversity areas. All of this work is often done because of the thousands of volunteers that we work with, but often a lot of this research costs money to be done. And it's only with the help of our supporters that we were able to do our Regent Honeyeater work. And our Woodland Birds program is looking at not just Regent Honeyeaters, but a whole suite of threatened bird species. So when you're doing the backyard bird count, if you look on there and click on the donate page, it will show you where you can go and donate to Birdlife Australia to help us continue the sort of work that we're doing with Regent Honeyeaters and a whole lot of other woodland birds. Okay, I'll just have a quick break and then we'll line up the next interview. Here we go. And those were white-browed wood swallows, which are gorgeous birds that move from the inland, arid inland into sort of this time of year. You can get them in southeastern Australia and southwestern Australia, although the masked wood swallow is a bit more common in southwestern Australia. Now, all the work that we do at Birdlife Australia is based on science. We have our researchers, but we also rely heavily on citizen science. That is people going out and doing bird surveys, including the Aussie Backyard Bird Count. The sightings that you will submit in your Aussie Backyard Bird Count will be vetted by our bird experts to make sure that the information that goes into our database is high quality, and then we can start using it for our analysis of what's going on with the populations of Australian birds in the places where we live. It's a big knowledge gap that you're helping us fill. And we're incredibly fortunate as an organisation that we have a new president of the board. Her name is Martine Marin, Professor Martine Marin. She's a long-time bird lover and a supporter of Birdlife Australia. And I was able to catch up with her earlier on her property outside Brisbane in the Brisbane Valley. And we were talking about what birds she's going to see in her 10-acre backyard this year. So I'll hand over to Joe. There might be a bit of a lag as we talk to Martine. And welcome back to the launch of the 2020 Aussie Backyard Bird Count. And I am really thrilled today that one of our first guests up is the new president of Birdlife Australia, Martine. Now, Martine is a Professor of Environmental Management at the Uni of Queensland. She's a member of the Wentworth Group of Concerned Scientists and a director of the NESP Threatened Species Recovery Hub. But she's also, Martine, I think I can out you here in public, pretty much a bird nerd from a very early age. And Martine knows her stuff, and she's coming to us live today. You are at home in whereabouts in Queensland, Martine?
Our place is just, it's about 50k inland of Brisbane, basically, just in the far part of the Brisbane Valley, just before you get into the Lockyer Valley, if you know that part of the world.
Oh, fantastic birding spots. So that's sort of on that cusp of, it's dry country, open woodland, but it's really close to some rainforest. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a real mix through here. Everything is incredibly dry at the moment, so it's hard to remember. But yeah, there's sort of what they call dry rainforest or semi-evergreen vine thicket vegetation through here, which is really, really diverse. Lots of different plant species and lots of different birds. And it's mixed with eucalypt woodland, you know, forest red gum type woodland as well.
Oh, so does that mean, like, it looks pretty amazing on your balcony there. What sort of birds are you going to get when you do a bird count?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot to replant this block, mostly with those dry rainforest species. And we've done that because when we first moved here, it was really just a paddock with eucalypts. And so it had noisy mice and big birds, but no small birds. But these days, we've managed to bring a lot of the small birds back. And the noisy miners, they'll probably be included in the counts, but happily, they won't be the commonest things. Probably the commonest will be the brown honeyeater, a small honeyeater, very, very loud. In fact, I'm surprised we're not hearing one right now. And there's lots and lots of rufous whistlers at the moment. I think probably leaden flycatchers, and there is a lot of quail activity. I've kept some like quite thick lower vegetation and grassy patches in amongst the trees, and the brown quail are in huge numbers at the moment.
Oh, that's fantastic. They're a bird that we don't often get in people's gardens or in the backyard bird count. The quails are pretty low. So obviously with people having fences and things and clearing so much in our gardens around our houses, they're not a bird to pick up. We really need your count. That's going to add something really special to us.
I'll do my best to pick those quails up. We also eat grass birds, little grass birds, and of course lots of redback fairy wrens out in the grass as well. So we're sort of in this stage now where we've got a lot of trees being planted back, and so there's less and less of that grassland, which is pretty weedy. But like I say, it's good for the grassland birds, so we don't want to lose all of it because most of the paddocks around here have just been completely grazed. It's really low rainfall at the moment, so there's just no habitat for them outside of this patch.
It's interesting you talk about habitat. I know your work that you, through your lab at the Uni of Queensland, you look at a lot of conservation biology, and especially with woodland birds. And you're talking about creating habitat on your place, but overall, across the landscape, what are the big issues facing Australia's birds, especially woodland birds out where you are?
Oh, well, you know, I've just come back from a trip up to sort of Western and Central Queensland, and it's really tough actually driving around. A lot of that area has been very heavily cleared, and really recently there's a lot of areas with recent habitat loss, and obviously when the habitat goes, the birds go. So there's just huge areas you don't see birds anymore, and you fly across Eastern Australia, well you don't these days, but when one used to fly across Eastern Australia, you can see that there's just huge areas where there's just no habitat for those woodland birds, which is why we're doing so much on this little block. But it's also why organisations like Birdlife are so important, to work with people, work with landholders, and try to put back and protect what we've got left for that really classically Australian group of birds, those woodland birds.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I can hear one of them now. Is that Pocock? Is that a bar-shouldered dove calling?
Yes, it is. Yes, I've got a couple of bar-shouldered doves, and they are absolutely rubbish at nesting. They keep trying. It's like 3 sticks and an egg, and the egg disappears, whatever. So I think they're going to try. They're acting like they're going to try again. We also have some peaceful doves hanging around, which did successfully rear a chick, which was lovely.
Oh, wow. Oh, excellent. Well, I'm going to leave you to it and get counting. And thank you so much for joining us and being part of today. And good luck with all the work that you're doing, both professionally at the Uni of Queensland and also with us at Birdlife Australia. It's great to have you on board.
Oh, thank you. And it's just exciting to be part of an organisation that does so much for these amazing birds. It's a very exciting week, so I can't wait to see all of the birds that everybody counts. And yeah, I hope everyone gets on board. Download the app. It's really easy to use.
Thanks very much, Martine. That was Martine Marin, everybody. It was there. Yeah, Martine, as I said, you know, she is a brilliant bird person, brilliant bird watcher too. She's been birding for a long time. But as she said, the app is actually really easy to use, and we've designed it to try and make it as user-friendly for the beginner bird watcher as possible. So in case you haven't downloaded the app yet, or you have and you haven't quite worked out how best to use it, we're just going to run for you now a little video introduction about how to use the Aussie Bird Count app. And there we go. I'm just putting my guitar down now. Boy, you know, that's really hard one to keep those chords going. Yes, so hopefully that will give you a really good idea. And just to note that we made that video last year. We've since made it even easier to use, and the field guide button is now called the Find a Bird button. So you don't have to worry about it being, you know, scary field guide. It's actually just a simple guide as how to find a bird. Now, our next guest, a couple of years ago, the backyard bird count was going really well, and we thought it'd be great to get some chief counters, some BirdLife ambassadors to help us promote the story. And we sat down in the backyard bird team and spoke about who we would like to have. We all decided that somebody like Miff Warhurst would be ideal because, you know, people know her work through Spicks and Specs and hosting Eurovision, and her radio work on Triple J, Double J, ABC Radio. And I actually did know Miff from back in the day, and we did work together for a while on Spicks and Specs. But I never actually knew that she had much interest in birds until I think it was last year. She asked me to come on to the show, her ABC radio show, to talk about the Aussie backyard bird count. And I discovered that she's sneakily been hiding her love for birds. I don't think she'll call herself an expert, but like so many of you out there, she just really loves seeing birds in her backyard and around the place, especially where she grew up in near Mildura. I think that's right. And I'll bring her on now. Miff, how are you?
Hello, Sean. Nice to see you.
It's lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. And that's right. Was it Redcliffs that you grew up in?
Northwest Victoria. So Redcliffs, and then also up on the Darling River as well, past Wentworth in New South Wales. So much bird life where I was growing up. And I've always been really interested. And my dad, he paints, and he's a painter, and he loves birds. I'm not sure. You can probably, if I just move that over the other, that way, you can sort of see there's a red cockatoo in that one up there. It's probably not quite close enough, but
Oh, okay.
he paints beautiful birds. So I've always been really keen on looking at the birds and watching them and seeing them in their native habitat. But I don't really know much about them. All like my closest experience was back when I was a kid, and we used to look at that book. What bird is that? I don't know if you remember
yes.
the Gould League, I think it was. And so last year when you came on the show, on the radio show, and you said we're doing this bird count, and I thought I should really do that because I'm not an expert at all, but I love them. So it was a perfect way for me to start. You know, if you're ever feeling a little bit nervous, this is a really good way because you don't have to know everything. The guide on the app is amazing. So you might get a few things wrong, but it doesn't matter as long as you're participating.
Yes. Well, I think that's the experience of so many people. They don't really consider themselves hardcore bird nerds. Like, okay, maybe guilty.
You are, Sean.
But but they love interacting with birds, whether that's the lorikeets that feed in the tree or the magpies that come tapping on the window looking for a handout. It's so you're I think you're in Melbourne. You've been in Melbourne this year, haven't you? Enjoying our fabulous 5 days.
Well, that's the other thing. I know that most states have only been in lockdown. We're in lockdown for a couple of months or a couple of weeks earlier in the year. But for those of us in Melbourne, our backyards have now become our lifeblood in a way. We spend every single day in our own homes, and you go out for a little bit of exercise and whatnot. But what's going on in my backyard's just become so important. So I go out there in the day, and I haven't got many birds in my backyard, sadly, because I've got 2 cats, who are, and a dog. So they don't really like the animal activity, but we've got honeyeaters in the tree with a nest. And obviously the cats can't get anywhere near there. And the honeyeaters have got their little nest, and they swoop the animals, and I love it. There's all this interaction going on, and it's like a little family in the backyard. But I make sure that the cats are inside for most of the time, so they don't ever attack the birds, which is good.
Oh, excellent. It is that thing. We certainly, in the first few weeks of lockdown, we were just getting inundated at Birdlife with questions from people. And I think it was like a lot of the questions was, is COVID affecting the birds? They're going crazy in my neighbourhood. And we sort of realised that when we drilled down and asked people exactly what were the birds doing, turns out they were doing exactly what they normally do. It's just that we've changed. We've become more quiet and more attentive, and the world is quieter. So a lot of people have had that similar experience. Like you described, this perfect soap opera that's happening outside your window, and it's outside everybody's window.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to mean that lots more people are really interested in doing something like this, because once you realise the activity and the routines of nature as well, all the little birds have got their own little routines and time schedules and all of those things, and it makes us understand them so much more. And and once you've opened that door, you can't stop. Like today, I did my first count. I didn't do it in my backyard because, like I said, it's not that exciting around here for birds. But I went to my local dog park. I took the dog off for a run, and there's a tawny frogmouth who's just had 2 little babies who are sitting up in the tree, and it's like, it's like heaven just watching them grow, and it's been beautiful. So I'm really excited.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I think that earns you the mantle of genuine bird nerd, because most people just walk straight past a tawny frogmouth. They do their best to look like a lump of dead wood. And you've got your bird radar tuned.
I sure have. And these little critters are really, like, you've got that grumpy face, and they're all sort of funny feathered and just looking around, sussing us all out, which is very cute.
I've always thought they were more Muppet than bird.
They really are. I hadn't thought about that. They are so Muppet.
Excellent. And we had in the video at the start of describing the app, we had the variegated fairy wren there. I've got a feeling that you were a real fan of the wrens. Is that right?
Oh yes, I love it. The fairy wren's one of my favourites. But you were the one, Sean, that told me about their promiscuous activity. I had no idea that they're possibly the blue fairy wren's possibly the most promiscuous of all the birds. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the research showed when they did DNA testing of the offspring that something like 87% of chicks weren't from both parents. That and then they've studied it. The female hops off the nest and goes and visits her boyfriend pre-dawn, and by allowing the male to do the same thing. So it's a bit like fairy wrens tend to just have key parties over and over again.
I love that. Good on them. Not so good in lockdown when you can't leave your house, but they're fine. They don't have any of those issues.
Yeah, indeed. Well, all right. Well, thank you, Miff. I'm glad that we have pushed you on your journey to bird nerddom.
It's really good, and I encourage everyone to get involved. I mean, I think I'm probably preaching to the converted, but there's so much to learn out there for someone like me who really doesn't know the names of things, and just sitting and observing for 20 minutes is so good for knowing even what to look for. And once you've gone on taken those steps, it becomes so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. I'm always struck by, even though I look at birds all day, when I stop and do a count for that 20 minutes, that rhythm and pulse of nature is one bird will move in and then another one will come and scare it off and then they'll interact. And it's just a fantastic contemplative, meditative moment as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good for the head and it's good for the heart and the soul. So, yeah, get amongst it.
Yes, you heard Miff. You can't say no to Miff, people. Get out there. Tell your friends about it. Well, thanks so much.
I'm telling everyone about it, like on Facebook and on Instagram in the last couple of days, and it's gone mad. People are absolutely nuts for this, Sean. You should be really pleased with what you're doing, and people are really excited, even the novices like me.
Well, I think it's time for the birds to shine. I really do, and we really appreciate you putting that spotlight on them, Miff. So thank you once again, and get out there and keep counting.
I will, I promise. See you soon, Sean. Good to see you.
Cheers. Lovely to see you. And, of course, that was Miff Warhurst. And that was Miff Warhurst, and that was a duck. That was a male chestnut teal. And a lot of these videos that we're showing come to us from the Birds in Backyards team, our urban birds program at Birdlife Australia. And if you really enjoy what you're doing with the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, you can continue to participate in monitoring your local birds and learning about your urban birds through the Urban Birds program. The Birds in Backyards website is appeared on the screen. Thanks for that, Joe. And they do we do with that a quarterly backyard survey, which is a bit more detailed than your backyard bird count. And that is so that we can get the information on what your backyard is like, what sort of trees and plants are in there, how much birds get interfered with by pets or cats coming into the yard, those sorts of things. And Holly and Monica and the team at the Urban Birds project are using that to see how we make our bird gardens more bird friendly. So it's well worth checking out. Then there's lots of great resources on birds in backyards. And the bird that I showed you there was a duck. And I'm going to bring our next guest in because I think he might be able to help us answer one of the perennial questions. Lewis Garner, thanks.
Hello.
Now, the question I want you to think about, you don't have to answer yet, is which is funnier, a duck or a chicken? Now, pause on that while I introduce you to everybody. Lewis, for those of you who don't know, is one of Australia's rising comedy stars. He burst on the scene in 2016, winning the South Australian, representing South Australia in the Raw Comedy Finals. And he's done several major stand-up shows since, and was all set this year for the Melbourne Comedy Festival. Basically, the festival got cancelled about a week out, and his show was going to be called, I think this is right, The Worst Train I've Ever Built. So Lewis has gone from, he's also unfortunately moved from South Australia to Melbourne. Good timing with that move. And during lockdown, Lewis has had, like what we were talking about with Miff, the epiphany that birds are kind of interesting. So you've moved on from trains to, is that right? Not meaning to.
No, that is right. That is right. Also, that show that I was going to do this year, that I was going to tour around, a lot of the stories in that show were about working in childcare, because I've worked at schools throughout my life, and I did have one story actually about one of the schools that I worked at had chickens. There was chickens in the school, and I convinced a 6-year-old kid that I could speak to the chickens and understand their language. So for about an hour of the day, I was just standing there with this kid, just like making chicken noises. So because of that, I'm going to say that chickens are funnier, because that was really funny.
Yes. I have always thought that, we get the comedy festival debates, but I think that the one that would really truly be the essence of the nub of where comedy comes from is if we had celebrity comedians debate which is funnier, a duck or a chicken, and you could have Daffy Duck on the floor and Foghorn Leghorn.
I think that'd be a great debate.
Well, there's so much in there.
Yeah. What do you think's funnier, Sean?
I think chickens are more funny visually. Yeah. I love watching chickens interact, but I think sonically, audio-wise, ducks, there's something inherently comical about a quack.
Yeah.
And then also yes, true. To see them sort of eating, it's quite bizarre.
I think, just quickly on that, I think cockatoos, I've decided that cockatoos, like personality-wise, are my favorite birds, and I spend a lot of time laughing when I watch cockatoos interact with each other, like the way they push each other off branches and stuff. I think they're so funny.
Yeah. Have you seen, I don't know where in Melbourne you are, do you get the corellas or galahs around?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm quite lucky. I'm near the Yarra River, and sort of like the north part of it, like near Templestowe kind of area. So within my 5Ks, when Melbourne was in the stage 4 lockdown, and I think we can go 25Ks now, but when you could only move 5Ks, I could get to the Yarra and walk my dog and see cockatoos, corellas. Yeah. I saw black cockatoos there a couple of weeks ago. That was amazing. Brilliant. Yeah. I saw gang cockatoos there as well. So yeah, it's been.
That's one I didn't get on my lockdown list.
I was so happy when I saw those. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what birdwatchers call being gripped off. You've just gripped off. You've got gang on your list. Yeah, unfortunately, as you're discovering, birdwatching has some very dodgy sounding terms in the vernacular. So, I just want to get back to that. You actually, you weren't a birder. You wouldn't consider yourself a bird watcher until the lockdown. What happened during lockdown? Is it just you blew a fuse and thought birds are my thing, or you heard this?
I think like I've always loved animals, but I've sort of birds have been kind of background to my love of animals. Like birds are just there and I don't really observe them much. But during the lockdown, I think because you were talking about it with Miff, because my life has been so stagnant and I've had a chance to just pause, then you start noticing things. My brother and I were sitting in our backyard during the first lockdown, the first wave earlier this year, and these two wattle birds were sort of, it was like they were chasing each other, but they were going right past us, and they looked like missiles, like they were flying so quickly, and we were both like just watching them for ages. And then I think from that moment onwards, I started instead of just seeing birds and them being around, I started looking and noticing things a lot more. And it's been great. I've loved it. It's quite honestly kept me sane throughout this whole pandemic. It really has. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you're Robinson Crusoe there. I think birds have been the salvation of a lot of us.
Yeah.
And it's what you talk about there is what the Americans refer to as the spark bird, the bird that ignites that passion for birds. And I, to be honest, not that many people I know have got a wattle bird as their spark bird. It's
Yeah.
a cocky or something like that. So I'm deeply impressed. That shows that's not a superficial attraction there to
Definitely. Yeah. It wasn't like I saw, a beautiful kingfisher or something. It was just these two wattle birds. But I've watched them quite a lot now since, and they are pretty crazy the way they behave. Like they swoop other birds and like they do all sorts of crazy stuff. I really like watching them.
Yeah, they're fascinating. I the walk to school seeing a pair of little wattle birds when I was in primary school building a nest, and that was one of the things that really hooked me in. Was just, this is before I knew about bird watching, just every day seeing the nest progress and then the chicks get older. A lot of people wattle birds, but it's just such a wondrous thing to observe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was just listening to you talk to Myth as well, and that I saw recently like a couple of tawny frogmouths, and then I've been watching them, and I haven't seen any chicks yet, but I'm hoping, I don't know, you'd probably know more than me, maybe like in spring at some point I'll see some chicks. But yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, they're definitely nesting, certainly in Melbourne at the moment, and I'm sure around a lot of the country. And yeah, they tend not to, the chicks are quite well grown before they leave the nest, it seems. At the moment, all these, I've got two nests in my neighbourhood, and they're just these little white fluff cotton balls poking out from underneath the mum.
Cute.
So it's a great one to see. Well, thanks for joining us today, Lewis. It's been great to talk with you. And for those of you who want to check out more of Lewis's work, he has a podcast. He's keeping himself busy when he's not birding, called "Can I Borrow Your Mind?" And it's a really excellent podcast where he talks for an hour with really fascinating people, and occasionally a chief bird nerd from Birdlife. But it's certainly across a range of topics, often comedians, but often just interesting people. And thanks for joining us, Lewis. And I hope you enjoy the bird count during Bird Week.
I just quickly, so I would urge anyone, if they do have any interest in my podcast, Sean is on. He's a guest on one of the episodes, and it's fascinating. It's really fascinating, I reckon, hearing you speak about birds and nature. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, everyone should get on the count, because I did one this morning and it's really fun. It's the best.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, mate. We'll
have a good one.
When our zones overlap, let's go birding.
Absolutely. I'm keen.
Okay. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
That was Lewis Granham. And as I said, his podcast is really well worth a listen to. Now, that was just a short clip of a flock of Carnaby's black cockatoos, which came from our friends in Birdlife Western Australia, who run the Great Cocky Count every year. And in Birdlife Australia, working with Birdlife Western Australia as our state representative, are doing an enormous amount of work on trying to protect the Carnaby's black cockatoo. It's a bird that is in the Perth suburbs, particularly more in autumn and winter, but it's an endangered species that relies on the pine plantations and the Banksia woodland right across the Perth Swan coastal plain. So it's a bird you don't always just see introduced birds or the everyday common birds, there are genuinely endangered species that turn up in your backyard and in your local parks. And you need to keep an eye out for them, because we always think of nature as being out there, sort of at the gates of a national park, whereas really nature starts at our window. And I know this, sitting here in this seat, I was on a Zoom call with my Birdlife colleagues, and I had a swift parrot, critically endangered bird, less than 1,000 pairs left, and it landed in the tree next door. So you look up, you listen, and you never know what you might see. And our next guests are two of my favourite bird people. They're Mike and Mandy Bamford from Western Australia. I'm going to ask them whether they've seen any Carnaby's black cockatoos around lately, but they've been heavily involved in Birdlife Australia. Mike is currently the vice chair of Birdlife Western Australia, and Mandy is currently one of our board members at Birdlife Australia. And they are two of the loveliest bird watching people that I've met. And let's have a chat to them now to see what's going on in Perth. Mandy, Mike, hi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
It's
Great to see you.
yes, I know it's very early in Perth with the time difference. Have you been out this morning?
no,
and done
it's
a bird count?
Oh, we have, yes. We had breakfast with the birds this morning. We
Excellent.
cup of tea and did our first bird count. So much fun. I love the bird count week every year. It's an excuse to go outside, isn't it, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And we were sat there now 20 minutes and got 17 bird species. We didn't get Carnaby's, but then it's spring and they've mostly got off to breed. So they're not in the Perth area in very large numbers. There's still ones and twos around.
But hopefully
right.
in one of the
17.
bird counts we do this week, pick them up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you're going to be going a bit further afield than your backyard?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's the thing with the bird count, isn't it? You know, we say backyard, but your backyard can be anywhere. And we're certainly planning on making our backyard, you know, somewhere else, southwest, you know, maybe down in just around the city, do something around the river maybe. So I love the fact that you can do it anywhere and it's just 20 minutes. It's so easy.
Yep. We've just come back from the Matty Fowl Discovery Centre at Ongarup, which is a small town about, well, it took us 7 hours to get back. It's a fair way from Perth. And of course, there were all these fantastic wheat-belt birds, purple-gaped honeyeaters, chestnut-back quail thrush. Didn't see cockatoos there either.
No, we heard some on the way back.
We heard some on the way back, actually. But the Matty Fowl, of course, was special there.
But I think that's Carnaby's for me, growing up in Perth, you know, just that iconic bird that brings you right home. And just long may that call ring out over Perth. It's just so distinctive of the Perth area.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And we've noticed from the Great Cocky Count in particular, but also the other work that our black cockatoo team in WA have been doing, that those cries of those beautiful evocative calls that you described, Mandy, across Perth, they've really diminished in I guess volume in a sense, because there's far less birds. I know our data shows that the birds are disappearing, but in your personal experience, are you sort of seeing less than you remember growing up?
Oh, absolutely. No, I remember when both Mike and I remember as children, just, you know, these flocks of thousands of birds just kept flying over, huge noise, dropping cones and gum nuts as they flew over. They were just wonderful and so magical part of my childhood. And if we talk to people now and say that, you know, we ask them, how many do you see? And they might say, 10, 12, you know, if you're lucky, maybe 50, if you see a really big flock. Just nothing like we saw as children. Yeah. And I mean, you too, didn't you?
Same thing. I grew up in a fairly inner city suburb and there were pine plantations nearby, and it was quite normal to see 4,000 or 5,000 Carnaby's fly over the houses, dropping pine cones on the roofs. And now that's gone, except for one or two locations. So yes, when people see 20 or 30, they think they've seen a lot of Carnaby's, and that's not a lot of Carnaby's, nothing. But you know, they're hanging on, as you say. They're using the suburbs. They're using the suburbs more and more because they've almost got nowhere else to go. So it's why it's so important that people, have food plants in their gardens and such like, which is quite a trend in Perth now.
Yes, and I noticed you said you had 17 birds in your garden. That seems a pretty impressive tally. Do you have a lot of natives in your garden? Is it a consciously bird-friendly garden that you've created?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Look, we've been here for 30 years and it started out as a paddock. So it was quite interesting. Because we're like that, we've been recording the birds in our garden since we started. And it's a slightly larger than normal block, but we had pipits, in our garden when we started, and veldgrass. And then since then, we now have, massive marri trees that are Carnaby's food plants and, Banksias, grevilleas, all sorts of stuff. And we have, 3 nesting honeyeaters at the moment, 3 brown honeyeater nests.
Oh, really?
We've got 2 pardalotes nesting. Willy Wagtail.
Willy Wagtail's just making the pardalotes are in nest boxes. One hangs off the carport above the rubbish bins, and the pardalotes you have to dodge pardalotes when you go and put rubbish out. And the other one nest box hangs from the pergola, so we can see them going in and out from our living room. That's rather fun.
And I guess the other thing is we live next to a lake. Yeah. So we do have straw-necked ibis which flew over, which
do they count?
Everything
in our
counts.
Airspace, so they're in our airspace. Our block in our mind extends a kilometre above us, so anything that flies in our airspace, we got the
absolutely.
brown goshawk and the pipes. Yeah. But we missed out on the red-cap parrot. We had red-cap parrots in the garden. Yes, we do, but we didn't get them in our 20 minutes this morning. But maybe we'll do more 20 minutes in the garden, so we'll get them sometime.
Of course, that's one of the birds that are being displaced by the feral population of rainbow lorikeets in Perth, isn't it? And it's one of the things we're picking up in the backyard bird count about how common rainbow lorikeet is, and hopefully over time we can keep track of how the local parrots like the 28 parrot and the red-cap parrot are doing, and whether in relation to the rainbow lorikeet. So thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Mike. It's fabulous to catch up with you. I look forward to when we can travel interstate again and see you here in Melbourne, or I can get over to Perth again. But it's wonderful to have you on board and supporting this. And thank you for everything that you and our friends at Birdlife Western Australia and all our supporters over there do, because without you, birds like Carnaby's and a lot of other threatened species would be in far more trouble than they are. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
Nice to see you all.
And that was Mike and Mandy Bamford, and we will be going to a live bird count very soon. And we're back, thanks to those lovely wonga pigeons there. Now, talking to Mike and Mandy, we're talking about threatened species like the Carnaby's black cockatoo, and our supporters at BirdLife managed to achieve a lot of amazing outcomes for the environment, including in Western Australia. Thanks to some of our strongest supporters there, we've been involved in the push to get a fabulous place, part of the Great Western Woodlands, declared a national park. And as we understand it, last week, the government signalled their intention to declare the Helena and Aurora Range as a national park, which is just a fabulous outcome for a lot of birds that are dependent on those beautiful outcrops of rock in the middle of the Great Western Woodlands. And if you want to get involved in BirdLife Australia's campaigns to try and protect our endangered species, check out we have a web page called actforbirds.org. And if you go to Act for Birds, it shows the campaigns that we're working on. We're currently heavily involved in Toondah Harbour near Brisbane, trying to protect habitat from development that's important for the critically endangered eastern curlew. we have we're currently also running a campaign to try and get the second generation of rat poisons off the shelves in the supermarkets and hardware stores, because we know from the research, particularly out of Western Australia, that we're seeing that these toxins build up in the environment and they impact on our native birds, our predator birds like boobook owls and other birds like that. So if you want to assist us in trying to make a difference for birds, you can get all the latest on the Act for Birds website, which is on your screen now. And now I'm very excited to introduce our live counter. We're going to attempt something, technical difficulty of 9.7 to see if we can do an actual Aussie backyard bird count in the wild. So I'm going to introduce him. You may recognise the face, just adding him to the stream. Here we have everybody. I'd like to welcome Michael Veach, an old friend of mine. Oh, he's got the mask on, so if you don't recognise. For those of you who can't recognise the mask, Michael, of course, was a bit of a comedy hero of mine growing up, and then I eventually got to work with Michael on shows like Full Frontal. But you'd remember him mainly from The D-Generation and Fast Forward, and also one of the characters he played in Fast Forward was a parody of an arts presenter. And he then spent quite a few years, about a decade later, being an arts presenter on the ABC. But Michael is also a long-time bird lover, and we've been out in the field quite a few times, and it's always a delight to catch up with you, Vici, and you're going to be our guinea pig today.
G'day, Sean. How are you going?
I'm good. Now, you're not in your backyard, I assume, but you're in a local park?
Well, this is my backyard. Television was very generous to me, and this is actually one of my smaller ponds. No, actually, on the bank of Lilydale Lake, just a few kilometres out of Melbourne, and just down from the Yarra Valley where I live. So that's where we're broadcasting from. And yes, I'm very. I think I've been involved in all your wonderful bird counts so far, Sean, and I'm very, very keen to get my first count as early on the first day as I possibly can. And this will just about do it. This one we're about to do now, hopefully. Okay,
excellent. So, I guess we'll get started and we'll talk through the first 5 minutes or so, and then we'll check back in with you at a bit of a later stage and wrap it up. So, do you want to start, kick off the count? This is live. It's not television, people, but it's live.
All right, I'm using I'm just getting the okay, and we are going now. I can say I'm very happy to be here because I think just over there, and I don't know whether my beloved partner can get a photo of it. You probably can't see it, Sean, but in there, I think, is a young Australasian darter.
Ah, I definitely thought I heard one just croaking before. So.
That was. I think that's little grass bird over there. So that's 2.
Actually, that's a reed warbler with that.
Oh, reed warbler, yeah. That's
yeah.
what I actually said.
Yes.
Reed warbler.
Yeah, you're trying to slip that one past me.
There you go. Coming over to here, Brooke, darling, if we could get the picture. I think they're 2 wood ducks, so I'm doing well here. This first few seconds, I think I've got 3, which is nearly a record. Normally what happens is that the birds gather around me and they watch while I hit the 20-minute. They watch while I hit the 20-minute mark, and then they disappear. But not this morning. So this is quite good. So
That's excellent. We got you to work with true professionals today. That's we've been training those at Birdlife Australia for weeks to appear on cue.
That's right. Good. Well, yeah, you can rent a bird crowd as much as rent any crowd. What else? Walking up, I've seen a couple of red wattlebird. Is it red Lord wattlebird or just red wattlebird now? I can never keep up with the CSIROs or whoever does it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Sean.
Yeah. No, just red wattlebird, named after the little flap of red skin, the bit like a dewlap, I suppose, on the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wattle bird. I'll put a couple of those down. I got little wattle bird just over there. So I saw them. Yeah, they're still up in that tree.
The hens.
Oh, excellent.
And we might be able to get you some live pictures of a couple of purple swamp hens that are on this track. Beautiful track they have going around Lilydale Lake, and it's perfect for birds because, as you can see, it encloses this beautiful expanse of water, which I think is an artificial lake. Is that right, Brooke? Is it an artificial lake?
It is. Yes,
it is. Yes, it's an artificial lake with lots of lovely reeds. There's an island over there, which is apparently a fantastic roosting place for all sorts of things. You can usually smell the white ibis. But I haven't seen any today. Well, not the last half hour anyway. So I think let's walk over to this little bit here so we can get a nice panoramic view, or something just down there. There you go, grey butcherbird. I'll put them down.
Excellent.
Sean, just tell me now. I'm going to walk backwards and talk to you at the same time.
Very Attenborough of you.
Third year in a row that you've done it, Sean?
This is actually our 7th year.
7th? Really?
7th,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Where does the time go? But yeah, as I say to everyone watching, we had 88,000 people get involved last year, and we're really hoping this year with everybody's COVID experience and, you know, reflecting on being at home and how important having those birds around them lifted our spirits. We're hoping that we'll get over 100,000 people this year at least, and we're aiming to crack the 4 million bird mark. So you're helping here, Vici. Need those numbers.
And I noted what you said before. One of my favourite features of the app, Sean, is when it very gently prompts you when you've made a mistake. So if I accidentally hit here in Melbourne, if I accidentally hit, golden-shouldered parrot, this very polite notice comes up saying, unlikely that you did see that here, but hey, good on you, keep trying. And then you go, oh no, hang on, I've actually pressed the wrong one. But to what you've been saying about spotting things like swift parrot in your back garden, I imagine that you're going to have to sort of not do so many corrections because there are so many strange things happening in the world of birds at the moment.
Yes. Well, certainly when people report any birds that we are working on, like swift parrots or say a Regent Honeyeater or a painted snipe, then we will let our project teams know that those birds have been reported, and the project teams are going to get in touch to try and verify the sighting, because every sighting of those rarer birds is really important. So so that's fantastic that people are seeing that, and we'll chase those records up. So I'm going to let you keep going, and we're going to cross to our next guest and come back to see how many you get. So keep going, and we'll check in about 10 minutes if that's all right by you, Michael.
The challenge is on, Sean. The challenge is on. See you soon.
Okay. Good birding. There we go. So we'll be coming up in a sec. The faunal, the bird emblem of the ACT, where our next guest is coming from, and I'm really thrilled to have and to meet for the first time actually David Pocock, who has agreed to be one of our backyard ambassadors. And before we speak, David, sorry to bring you on and then hold you for a second. I've just been. The Birdlife people in the background have said there's been a couple of people trying to spam the feed on Facebook. And so we just wanted to let you know that don't click on anything that purports to come from us under the Australian Backyard Bird Count account. We don't have a Facebook page called the Aussie Backyard Bird Count. We only have the Birdlife Australia page. So obviously there's lots of nasty people in the world, and clearly I guess the Backyard Bird Count is having sufficient success that they feel like they can come in and try and capitalise on so many people getting involved. So just a bit of a community service announcement there. And David, thank you for joining us. We're really thrilled to have you on board. David Pocock was originally born in Zimbabwe and moved to Australia, I think around 2002. And he would be familiar to many of you as one of our most highly decorated rugby union players. I think it's 78 test caps with the Wallabies. Is that right, David?
Something like that.
Yeah, you're not keeping count.
Yes.
And David is also just an incredible force for good, using his position as a prominent sports person in this country for things like marriage equality, but also for conservation. And I understand you have your own charity, the 80-20 Vision, which helps people in Zimbabwe. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've been involved in Zimbabwe in some community development work there since 2009. Have more recently handed that over to a bigger NGO who is looking to scale it, and we're working on a community conservation project over there. Yeah,
and so growing up in Zimbabwe, you would have, I've never been, but I imagine that wildlife is pretty prominent in that country. And certainly looking at the field guides, it's just mouth-watering the types of birds you get there, the ground hornbills and all those myriad of cisticolas and weavers and things. Were birds prominent in your life? Did you sort of, growing up as a child, were you kind of connected to birds in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, I was really lucky growing up. My dad and my grandfather were pretty obsessed with birds. So it was just kind of, part of growing up. Wherever you went, you'd have your bird book and a pair of binos and be ticking things off the list, or trying to see what that little LBJ was. That's always really hard to identify. There are some incredible birds over there. A lot of big raptors. The vultures are always amazing to watch. And I guess moving to Australia, a lot of the marsupials are nocturnal, so you don't see a lot, but the birds are incredible. So that has been a real, such a great thing, trying to better learn about and try and see some of the bird life over here. The continent's so massive that it changes so much from East Coast to West Coast.
Yeah, because in your career, you were with I always forget which one's the union team. It's Western Force, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one in Perth.
Yeah, in Perth, and then you played in Queensland as well for a while, and now you're in Canberra or the ACT.
Yeah.
Did you notice much difference in the sort of bird life in the different parts of the country?
Yeah, it is obviously very different. I do love Canberra. Just getting a lot of the woodland bird species come through. After the fires this year, we've had a heap of yellow-tailed black cockatoos and gangs around the suburbs. Certainly more than I remember over the last 7 or 8 years. I've really enjoyed my time in Canberra.
Yeah, and you posted on Instagram this morning. You went out and did your first count, which certainly thrilled all of a lot of our staff at BirdLife who were sharing it. What did you see this morning?
It was so cool. There was 3 pairs of gangs up in a clump of pine trees, and this, I don't know what was up, but this pair of crimson rosellas were just going at them, just sort of doing laps, chasing them, bombing them. So that was kind of the main spectacle that was going for the full 20 minutes. And then in and around that, the usual noisy miners kind of, trying to boss everyone around and chase other birds. What else came through? A couple of currawongs, magpie larks, silver gull went past.
Oh, right.
A couple of galahs. So it was a good, it was an eventful 20 minutes.
Yeah, nice mix. And we were talking earlier, I think it was with Myth, about the soap operas that we see outside our window with birds. You certainly sound like a Bold and the Beautiful style face-off between the rosellas and the gangs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, waking up in the morning and hearing gangs, I don't know, it's such a treat.
Yeah, that squeaky door or squeaky wheel call. I might ask you to do it live.
Good.
Oh, feel free. It's and so where you went today, was that on your property or just sort of in a park?
Straight across the road in a local park.
Yeah. Certainly really blessed. That bush capital concept really, it's not a marketing tool. It's a genuine reality, isn't it? You get the ranges like Mount Majura and those sort of places coming right in, and you get these woodland birds just on the edge of suburbs. It's a fantastic spot. I'm pretty envious.
Yeah, it is amazing. I think the Botanic Gardens, which backs onto Black Mountain, is one of my favourite spots to walk through, and like satin bowerbirds and
Oh, right.
a heap of other birds in there.
Yeah, because in Canberra you have that great mix. I'd forgotten you get satin bowerbirds there, which are, in my mind, are sort of more sort of taller, wetter forest kind of. But you also get you get that sort of open plains country, dry country birds coming in, especially in a dry bit. So you get crimson rosellas, but then you also get like superb parrots coming in the other way. Have you seen superb parrots around the ACT at all?
We saw a few in the neighbouring suburb probably 2 months ago, and then was out at a mate's property about a month ago, and there were a heap of superbs flying around, I'm guessing looking for the nesting hollows. So yeah, I mean, it is such a kind of a spot where you get the different I don't know, birds from different areas overlapping a bit. Getting the red rump parrots, the eastern rosellas as well. It's a great spot for birding. Yeah,
great. And it's great that this is one of the things that we hope to that the backyard bird count is going to help us work out, is how, from what we understand, superb parrots have really only just moved into the Canberra region in the last decade or so in sort of any sort of numbers. And we don't know whether they're expanding their range or they're refugees from land clearing. But it's fascinating to see whether the counts of superb parrots in the backyard bird count starts going up as they establish that population, and how they go competing with the other parrots and the common miners in terms of getting nesting hollows. It's so that's something we're really hoping to get.
Yeah, you guys are doing such important work, and I think it's so exciting to see opportunities for everyday Australians to be contributing to, science, a better understanding of what birds are where, which birds are doing better, trends over time. And I think particularly through COVID, people have been forced to slow down a bit and probably appreciate the amazing birds we have around us. And hopefully start to think about ways that we can potentially, help them out a bit and create even more habitat and protect a lot of the old growth areas that are just so crucial to our hollow nesting birds. And we're losing a lot of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know, definitely. Thank you for that. It's a great reminder that, while this is a week to celebrate our birds, it's also a week to really think about, what's going on with our birds. And unfortunately, while we still have this great flourishing diversity, we know from the work we've done at BirdLife Australia, we've been able to monitor that these birds are starting to disappear, and we need to translate that knowledge based on science into action plans, so that we can actually make a difference and save the habitat that the birds rely on. So it's a really great point you make, David.
Yeah, and I think the first step is really people noticing and learning more about the birds around them, because it's very hard to love things that you don't actually know about, and it's you're not going to get people pushing for things to change or for decisions to be made that are going to look after Regent's honeyeaters and these sorts of species if they don't actually know about them. So
true.
Really love what you guys are doing, and really glad to be part of it this year.
Thank you. We love the fact that you want to be part of it, just like, hopefully 100,000 other Australians. So I'll not take up any more of your time, David. I'll let you go out and get counting again. And thank you so much, Pocock, for joining us today. It's been a real treat.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. And that was David Pocock, everyone, and we are I think I can see him there, going to cut back to Michael Veach in the field. Veachy, how are you going?
Thanks, Sean. Coming to you live from it just doesn't feel right without a microphone in my hand.
Yes.
I have one. That's how old school I am. But
well, if we get more donations, maybe we can invest in a microphone for next year. So.
and one with a cord, please. I don't want any of this cordless modern rubbish. I'm having a great time here at Lidderdale Lake, and Brooke was just pointing out to me. Brooke's operating the camera and phone. See, there I go.
But you don't have an entire crew there.
I wish.
And Karchi doing your makeup.
Well, yeah. Even actual TV crews these days are about 3 people, so we're actually not too far off the mark. But it's funny, Melbourne's been in COVID. Places like Lilydale Lake and this beautiful circuit around have become like, Burke Street. Well, actually busier than Burke Street, because Burke Street's quiet. So it's great to know that people are getting out. I only have 6 minutes to go, but I can count 18 species that I've got in the last few minutes, Sean.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty good.
That is impressive. And the Australasian data, that's certainly one that I haven't seen in my 5K zone during lockdown. That's a nice one.
Yeah, well, for someone who's seen Swift Parrot, I think you might actually trump me. And just going by what our esteemed Mr. Pocock was saying just now, talking about gang cockatoos. I did get a couple of gang cockatoos yesterday, which was really, really good, because
nice.
they have that wonderful rusty, squeaky door hinge sound, don't they? I don't know if you can see it. His camera shy now. There was a Eurasian coot over there and a couple of purple swamp hens. I've got both pardalotes, wood ducks, rainbow lorikeet, little wattlebird, which is always nice to get here. I saw some miners harassing every bird, because that's what they do. They basically harass. But miners are good for flying birds out. I've decided noisy miners can do your work for you sometimes. And
excellent. There's a hack, everybody. There's a tip from Michael Veach. Use and it's good.
that is my Twitcher hack for the day. Get noisy miners to do your work for you. But they flushed out a pair of. Here we are. Here's our I don't know if you can see it. There's a purple swamp hen, and behind him, beautifully framed, is a Eurasian coot.
A direct comparison.
A direct comparison. The Eurasian coot, of course, with the telltale little white spot, like he's just been to the Australian Open and has got some zinc on it.
Excellent. Well, thank you. See, we wanted an example. We wanted to get somebody who, when people saw them do a survey, they would think, well, if he can do it, surely I can. And you've been the perfect exemplar of that, Michael.
Well, to be honest, my secret has been investing just this week in a pair of binoculars that is actually worth more than my car. Beautiful. Well, we shouldn't give ads away because I'm sure BirdLife has their own sponsorship, but these are reasonably high end. I nearly shuddered with sweat as I was pressing the send button to load up my credit card.
How bad is your car?
But mind you, I have a crappy Magna for many years old, so that's not my
Right.
But I only expensive bins would make the birds come to you. Sure, I thought they would appreciate quality, but not necessarily so.
No. Oh, well, it sounds like you've got a really good list there, and we look forward to you submitting it and adding to our total across the board. And I just thought I better even it up because these are our sponsors for the Backyard Bird Count, and I actually can recommend using the Swarovski binoculars. Yours are pretty cool.
I do love Boris. If honestly, they're wonderful.
Yeah.
The Rolls Royce, they really are. They're magnificent. Because I often borrow yours, Sean. So I know that yes, I know that I know just how good they are.
Well, if there's one thing one positive of COVID is that I'm not allowed to let you use my binoculars. So that's a win.
Damn, fabulous, Sean. I do love doing this, and really, I just want to echo what old mate Mr. Pocock just said, that it's such an important thing to do, and it is not just a week of celebrating birds, but just realizing how vulnerable they are. And I often wonder, I know we've had this conversation before, I wonder what the early settlers saw when they came here. And what the bush noises of the birds that are no longer exist would have sounded like. Wouldn't it be wonderful to go back to those times and actually see common things like paradise parrot where they were, and all the things, Rufus bristlebird, and not just Eurasian coot. But so it's a great way for us to become very cognizant of just how vulnerable our environment is. So glad you're doing it, Sean. Year number 7.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Michael, and we'll hopefully see you in the swamp soon.
Good on you. Okay.
Cheers. And that was Michael Veach showing, seriously, if Veach can do a survey, anybody can do a survey. And that was a pair of variegated fairy wrens. Well, actually, it was an adult male variegated fairy wren and a younger bird, presumably younger male bird, either going into or coming out of the male plumage, the adult breeding plumage. And you saw that they were in a bird bath. You can attract birds to your garden by putting bird baths out. It's a great way to help your local birds. And our next guest, I'm sure, will have a lot more tips on how to attract birds to your gardens. And I can't tell you how pleased we are to introduce our next guest. He probably doesn't need much introduction. I'll just bring him on. Please welcome Costa. I feel like you're the only person in Australia we don't need a surname for, Costa. The Garner of Australia.
Oh, geez. Thanks, Sean. You talked me up a bit, following in the footsteps of Michael there and David as well. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be an esteemed chief counter. I'm absolutely pumped, and been spreading the word over the last couple of weeks, and a big call out to all the people that have engaged with the posts and that have said how they've signed up and they're ready to roll. And I got out and amongst it this morning at my place at 6:30, and just as I started, it started pouring with rain, and I think the air traffic control sort of put a call out on the birdie web and said, "Hey, stay down." So I didn't get too I had 14, and this is the thing, Sean. Like, you know, there I am in the middle of, you know, downtown Bondi. A blowing southerly came in. It was pouring with rain, and in that 20 minutes, I still saw 14 birds and 6 different species. And
Right.
you know, Michael touched on it, and I didn't catch David, but from what I could assume he was talking about, this biodiversity, it's out there. But the beautiful thing about 20 minutes is that it's mindful time. It's a chance to actually turn everything off. And when you start to just pause and then look, you see these things. Like I had a bin chicken fly over, but it was only because I looked up that I saw it, and because it was really quite high. And you know, add that to the raven, a pack of crows went past, rainbow lorikeets, and a couple of miners as well. And you say there's things going on, and that was in moderately heavy rain. They were still defying the flying orders from ground control, and they still got up there. So that's what I'm really most happy about, is just this chance to share that excitement that you'll be really amazed at what you see. And the resources are great because you can look up what you think it might be and get help. And if you don't know, what a good thing too, that you've got to do a bit of homework and realize that we're not alone in the suburbs.
Absolutely. And I read an interview with you recently where you said how important going for a swim, an ocean swim, has been for you during this time. And I think you spoke also about the mental health aspects of that as well. When you're out there, have you ever encountered any like albatross coming by or anything, or get out beyond the breakers and just sit back and watch what goes past?
Yeah, look, I've sorry, I'm just getting a bit of right arm cramp because we've been doing some filming here. I've been holding the camera for a bit long. Yeah, look, I've seen some amazing things, but not always when I've been swimming down at the local, but when we've been out travelling with the show with Gardening Australia, you know, to spend time down on Montague Island. I've been up onto the Tiwis and to Thursday Island, and you just realise what a resource of wildlife we have, and equally, I suppose, from my point of view, is this stuff. It's the plants and the habitat and our opportunity. And I think this is the exciting bit for me, is that, you know, as a door into the world of birds, if we want more birds, it's not about giving them seed. Like that's the wrong mentality. What we need to give them is insects. And the way we get the insects is by having the plants, which bring the pollinators, and they become the food and the natural food for them. And so I like the idea that something like will whet people's appetite, but then we can take that next step and say, right, if you want to get more here, well, build the flags, build the lures, and the lures are the plants. And when you start to do that, you'll be amazed. And a lot of it, habitat is critical. And I'm out here at the moment at Western Sydney Uni at the Kingswood campus to put the spade in on the first day of a community garden that they're building here. That's the cover over the top of the garden beds you can see. But, you know, you look at this, and this type of hedging is not bird friendly. It's trimmed within an inch of its life. It's basically as good as a concrete wall because there's no habitat in that. Birds can't get in there, let alone do something with it. So you know, the idea with our gardens and with our planting we need to provide different habitat for different birds. We need the branches and the elevated, taller habitat of trees for our bigger birds, but we've got to think really carefully about what we provide for our small birds, and that pushes us to step outside of what we consider that safe zone of like, oh, it's got to be nice and it's got to be clean and pruned. No, it's got to be wild. We've got to allow the branches to grow up from the ground, not under prune them so that we can get in there as a gardener or as a person, and not all these nice soft leafed sort of plants that oops, that's my hand there. I should be better at this. Soft leaf things. We need the spiky plants. We need the Honeyeaters and the acacias and all of these different species growing in nice, dense, matted ways, so that the birds, the little birds particularly, they don't do open space like that. Like that's a death warrant. They want those things. So from a bird counter's point of view, have a look at your garden and think about what you can do, but you got to think like a bird, and put your birdie goggles on and say, well, am I going to get down in here? That's where I want to be. I want to be tucked in here on the ground, but I want it so that I can get in really, really close to the ground and feel safe, and then jump out there to get something, and then and feel like I'm not going to get hammered by some big predator. So there's so much we can do with our open spaces, and the thing I'm happy about this courtyard you see here, look at it. It's pretty much a wasteland.
It's very sterile looking.
Totally. And the first step was these two garden beds, and you take each step that you can get, and the plan is to turn this into an entire forest with plantings, edible food. But one step at a time. And these terraces behind me, instead of having just a monoculture of one plant, to actually get trees with canopy, so that will help protect the western sun and build a microclimate that will grow other plants, that will provide more floral service for our insects. And then that'll bring our bird. Isn't it, Sean? I mean, tell me, don't you just love this stuff?
Yeah, it's fantastic, Costa. I think if anyone takes anything from today about what you can do for birds in your gardens, and of course you can always go to the Birds in Backyards website that we run, or the Gardening Australia website. But just you heard it from Costa. Think like a bird, and think what a bird would need. I think if anyone takes one thing away from today, it's think like a bird. Thank you so much for joining us today, Costa. It's just been wonderful to talk to you, and thanks for your support over all these years, both getting us on to talk about birds. Holly Parsons from the Birds in Backyard team has been on with you on Gardening Australia, and your support has been a fantastic adjunct to the work that we do, because as we said before, nature doesn't happen at the gates of the national parks. It happens right outside our window. And thank you for helping Australians appreciate how to bring nature closer to them.
Look, thanks, Sean. We've got some great articles, Josh and Millie, and there's lots of great articles on the show specifically this week for bird life, and a couple of nice little hacks that people can do in terms of providing water and other habitat features. And don't I suppose, as you say, we can't underestimate that every little bit we do to build corridors and grow those little hops, skips and jumps for our birds to move across our towns, our villages, and of course our cities. And when we can all participate in connecting this grid, this biodiversity grid and corridors everywhere, then we'll bring the birds in, and we'll benefit so much from the therapeutic aspects of the buzz of saying, wow, look at that honeyeater, and oh, there's a sea eagle, or whatever it could be. So no, thanks for the chance to be involved again.
It's been great having you on. Thanks, Costa. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See you later.
See you, mate. That was Costa from Gardening. And that was a superb fairy wrens, who I believe is one of my next guest's favourite birds. Would you please welcome to the broadcast today the fabulous and brilliant Geraldine Hickey. Geraldine and I do a regular spot on her show on Breakfasters on Triple R, and for once it's now me interviewing you.
Yeah. Hello, Birdman.
Hi there, comedy woman. Now, you were, the last time I actually saw you in the flesh, I was in the studio and we were talking about the comedy festival, and your show was ready to go. It was sold out. And I remember, oh, no, I think I'm going to be right. And then bang, everything turned to brown.
Yeah.
Where have you spent lockdown?
Well, I'm in South Gippsland, down in Venus Bay.
Oh, nice.
There's my doggo. Which is, so unbelievably lucky. Like my partner has a house here and was living here part-time. And yeah, so we kind of, as soon as I could start working from home, I made this my home. So yeah, it's been really, really lovely. And it's been great checking out the birds here.
Yeah, I've been listening on Triple R and over the year, and just hearing you talk with such awe and joy about the birds and the kangaroos and things like that have just been keeping your spirits up. It's been really lovely to see that journey.
I don't have any friends. So, that's just become my friend. Like, let's just say, like, everyone's, been in lockdown, and I kind of, on radio, it's, I'm the person that comes up with the content. So things, I've got to try and think of things to talk about. And normally, in previous times, I would, talk about shows that I'd been to, or going to the movies or the theatre, or doing various different activities with multiple. But now, because we went into lockdown, it was like, oh, I can talk about the birds that I saw again today, because that's all that I've seen. I think I started a segment called "Where Have You Been? What Have You Seen?" So, which was just my way of going, I went for this walk and I saw this bird, or I saw this wildlife and whatnot. So, but also it's been really great learning about the different birds in our area. Like, and I think also because, like, we've got this back veranda, and we'd have, like, there was one day, there's a bird, we've got a bird feeder there, and just one day there was like crimson rosellas, and I was like, oh my,
wow,
oh yeah, it was like, oh, this is the best. And I'd said to my partner Kath, and I'm like, Kath, look at the rosellas that are right there. And she goes, oh yeah, they come there all the time. And I'm like, who cares if they're there every day? Like, it's still like, for me, I don't think it'll ever lose its appeal. Like, it's it's just like, oh, I can't believe there's rosellas right there, and even, like, I get just as excited when I see a rainbow lorikeet, and I know they're the most popular bird, but they're everywhere. So it's just like, but still, they're so pretty. Like, why would you get excited about seeing a rainbow lorikeet?
I know, how lucky are we that our most common bird in where we live is one of the most visually stunning birds on the planet.
Oh, so good, so pretty. It's been great. Yeah.
And how have you gone? Like, you've got a family of wrens, don't you, outside the window? Is that right? I think I heard you talking about it. You superb fairy wrens.
Yeah, we used to. In previous years, we've had that. They must have had a nest in a tea tree up the back, because I would see them all the time. But I haven't seen them around, like, in our actual backyard, but certainly seen them out and about. We live right next to, like, a reserve, so, which is where I went and did my bird count this morning. We've got construction happening in our backyard at the moment, so I'm gonna do when the workers have knocked off for the day, then I'll go out and do one in my actual backyard. But I kind
And
of,
what did you see this morning?
Oh, no, like just wattle birds. There are so many wattle birds. I thought like I'll go down into the reserve, and there's that path where I like to go and hang out a lot. It's just a really nice, peaceful place. It's, you don't really find many people walking past, and it's kind of, it's just a bit away, and there's just like a nice big gum tree. And there's been various times during lockdown where I've just kind of hung out there and tried to, find, see what new bird I can find. And I thought, I'll go down there today. But it really didn't offer me much at all today.
It's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it was like I just saw lots of wattle birds and a blackbird and a welcome swallow. So it's kind of like, I was even looking up and going, God, even sometimes like, herons fly over and stuff. I'm like,
yeah,
none of it. And then of course, as soon as it's over, I'm walking back and I see like a grey fantail, and then like I get back home, and then there's an eastern rosella that lands on the bird feeder. There's magpies outside. I'm like, where were you all like in that 20 minutes time frame?
Of course, you can do another survey in that spot, so you'll get them. But it is sod's law, isn't it, that the birds always disappear just as you press start. And I sort of, having been on radio with you for a number of years, I feel like that you kind of got into birds a lot through photography. You started taking shots of them. That's a common experience for a lot of our people. Is that sort of what really whet your appetite for birds?
I think, absolutely. Like I got a nice camera. Well, I got a camera with like this, I was just looking for a kind of half decent digital camera because I was going overseas and I just wanted to take some nice photos when I was on holidays. And I got sold this camera that has like an amazing zoom lens. And because I can like, zoom in on things far away, it's like birds were the only really cool thing that I wanted to zoom in on. Like it was like, I either spy on people, which is weird and don't do that, or I can go out into, nature and kind of, take photos of wildlife, and birds was kind of, there's so many of them, and it's, easy, and it's, and then so it's just, I've just really enjoyed doing it. So now it's kind of like I can't really I try not to leave the house without the camera. Like it's a really kind of, if I, leave the house, it's like, oh, should I take that? I'm like, no, you don't need the camera. But then like the other day, I was in Waratah Bay on the weekend, and I went for a walk along the beach, and I was like, I didn't take my camera. And then I walked along, and then I saw some hooded plovers.
Oh,
and I was
brilliant.
like, oh, yeah. And I was like, damn, I don't have my camera. Like I had my phone, but it's, it's not the same. And then I went, oh, well, and then I turned around and looked up, and there's a sea eagle, and I'm like, oh, damn it. and then turned around, and then there was like a pair of fairy wrens just hanging out on the beach as well. I'm like, I can't, this is like,
wow.
So I went for a walk the next day and then took the camera. So
good. You have to go down there and do another count with the camera as well. Because take out from today, it's Geraldine Hickey says that photographing birds is socially acceptable voyeurism.
Yes. Don't be photographing people from a distance. So just birds are fine with it. They love it. Put on a show for you.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you very much. And before we go, can I just ask, is that a Gouldley poster in the back? The water birds poster?
I set it up deliberately. So you can,
I love those posters.
They were an ISO purchase. And we've got another one as well, but we haven't found room for it. So we'll get there. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, thanks so much, Jez, for coming on, and it's been talking to
Oh,
you.
mate,
Good to see you
I'm
for
so
the first
excited.
time.
Yeah, it's been nice. I'm so excited. I was really, really chuffed to be able to do this. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing heaps of bird counts. Love it.
Oh, brilliant. It's great to have you on as an ambassador, one of our chief counters.
Cheers.
Have you got anything you can plug while we're here? You got any shows online coming up or anything?
Nah, not yet. I don't think so. Nah, just listen to
No.
Triple R 102.7.
Yeah.
Thursday,
Tune
what are you on? Thursday morning in a couple of weeks.
Yes. I think,
Yeah.
probably about 2 weeks' time, I think. So I look forward to
Yeah.
talking then, and enjoy the rest of Bird Week and enjoy your Aussie backyard bird counts. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Cheers. And that was Geraldine Hickey. And there was a selection of some of our migratory shorebirds, which is often for a lot of people in Australia, their backyard is literally the beach, the estuary out the back door. And here we thought it'd be great to get somebody on who's got a distinct passion for shorebirds, and also somebody from one of my favourite parts of the country. I was up there for the 2017 launch of the Aussie Backyard Bird Count in Darwin. And I can tell you that Darwin had the most number of birds of any of the Australian cities. So would you please welcome to the stream a great friend of Birdlife Australia, Amanda Lilly.
Hello.
Oh,
how are you doing?
Good. I'm good. And where are you? That looks like mangrovey.
It is mangrovey, and it's out the front of my house. I'm lucky enough to live by the shore in Darwin. I live in Nightcliff overlooking Ludmilla Bay, and I have this beautiful area of mangroves and then down into the foreshore where, of course, there's lots of shorebirds.
Yes, which is your expertise. You've got the Curlew project operating out of Darwin. Can you tell us about that? Because that's a fascinating thing about migratory shorebirds, a bird you think of as being a long way away, but in the middle of one of our bigger cities.
Yeah, so we are lucky enough here in Darwin to have anywhere from 10 to 15,000 shorebirds on our doorstep for up to 8 months of the year. And I like to say on our doorstep because, well, for me, I'm lucky enough to have them just off my balcony. But I only have to drive 5 minutes to one of the roosting sites, which is where the birds are resting, to go and count thousands of birds. And this is something that our group, Birdlife Top End, will do every month. So we go and count the birds as part of the Migratory Shorebird program. And these birds are calling Darwin and Australia home for more than half of the year.
Yeah, and the Curlew project that you're involved in is looking at the critically endangered eastern curlew in the port of Darwin, and they're actually in a very urbanised area. It's like not exactly a natural wetland, is it?
No, so while Darwin Port is not my backyard, it's not my home, I do go and count the birds there every month. I'm actually going there this evening because we have really high tides at the moment. And when we have high tides, we count the birds. It's just what we do. If you're a shorebird watcher, your life is dictated by tidal cycles because that's when the birds are resting and they all congregate together. So with the Curlew project that I work on, I go out there and I monitor the far eastern curlew, which is our critically endangered shorebird. It's also the largest shorebird in the world. And part of the project was going and catching these birds and putting GPS tags on them and tracking their movements in Darwin Harbour and their migration movements across the world. We've also been really lucky to work with the Australasian Wader Study Group and the Queensland Wader Study Group and the Victorian Wader Study Group and lots of amazing volunteers to go and catch these birds in Broome, in Roebuck Bay, and also in Moreton Bay and in Western Port, Victoria. So we've tagged birds at a number of locations, and if you live in any of those areas, it would be great if you can go out and have a look for the far eastern curlews. And we followed their movements locally to see how they interact with the environment and how they move in these natural environments, but also the modified environments, so places like the Darwin Port. What we found from our Darwin birds is that the birds are moving from the Darwin Port site to the mangrove areas and to salt marsh and to the intertidal mudflat every day, and they just do this really habitual movements every day, going back and forth with the tide. So that's why the tide is so important for these shorebirds.
Yeah, and I understand that you've been doing your study on this, but am I incorrect in hearing that you've just completed or received your PhD on the project? So you are now Dr. Amanda Lilliman?
Yes, that's right. So the PhD.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. The PhD was on a range of shorebirds, but predominantly the great knot. So another one of our critically endangered shorebirds, and a lot of the monitoring done by Birdlife Australia and the Australasian Waders.
Oh, with you. Yep. Now you're back.
Oh, where did I go? Onto the mudflat.
Yes. I'm keeping an eye in the background in case there's any tiles creeping up on you. But it's, no,
it's okay here. I've got some lemon-bellied flycatchers in the background, double finches, and you won't believe what was calling just before I tuned in.
A rainbow pitter?
No, actually, that's one species I've never had in my backyard, but I had a brush cuckoo calling.
Oh, wow. Oh,
yeah, it's a really nice bird. And I've usually got crimson finches coming in for a drink at my balcony in the little pot plants I've got.
Well, as somebody who's been stuck in Melbourne for 6 months, the envy levels are incredibly high, Amanda.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I love to, that's the great thing about the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, is seeing people from all over Australia and what they're seeing, especially if you can't get out yourself. Just to know that those birds are out there is great.
Yeah, and the birds are still waiting. When people can get out, the birds will be waiting up here, and they're active throughout the whole year. So in the tropics, we've got birds breeding throughout the whole year. There is a bit of a spike in breeding behaviour at the moment. There's spangled drongos breeding and lots of honeyeaters, rufous banded honeyeaters breeding. Yeah, it's the place to be.
Absolutely, I can verify that, everybody. As I said, in the 2017, when we did the launch of the Backyard Bird Count, when we could actually go out to cities, and I did my barnstorming bird watching tour around Australia's botanic gardens. I spent the morning with Amanda at one of her wader roost sites, and it was just phenomenal birding. And I saw 94 species of bird within about 10 kilometres of Darwin that day. And that wasn't even a full day's birding. That was sort of 6 hours.
Yep.
You're in a great part of the world, and it's been fantastic that you've joined us, and congratulations.
Thank
on all,
you.
Particularly on the PhD. That's awesome news. You heard it here first.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amanda. Enjoy the rest of the count.
Thank you. You too.
And that was Dr. Amanda Lilliman. And we are getting very close now. I'll just check my list. Yes, we've got our last guest coming in. So I will just make sure he's arriving, and we'll see you soon. And those were fairy martins collecting the mud that they're going to build their bottle swallow nests in. It's traditional in these sorts of broadcasts, when you think about a news bulletin, you always end with the sports at the end. You finish up and obviously with the fluffy animal story. We've had fluffy, puffy, feathery animals all the way through. So we are going to finish with a genuine sport broadcasting legend and a fellow Seafordite. Our next guest grew up in the same suburb that I did. We're a few years apart, but basically the thing we have in common is a love of Collingwood Football Club and a love of the Seaford Swamp. And so I'd like to introduce our final guest for the day, Paul Kennedy. Oh, we've got you on mute there. We can't hear you.
How's that?
That's it. Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Sorry, mate.
And a very dove-like sound in the background.
Yeah, that's the spotted dove. I told you I'm on the back deck here, and I have been writing a book, and so I come out every couple of days, a couple of hours every day, and the spotted doves come and sit with me and start cooing. But I suppose it depends on how well I'm writing, on just how much I can get into the mood of the cooing. But they've set up a excuse the mess in the backyard, but there you go. They've set up a little nest on a heater that I bought several years ago and have never ever got working. And I would otherwise throw that thing on the nature strip on hard waste collection, but it seems to be a good place for the nest, so I'm happy for them to use it.
So that in the catalogues they should just advertise them as dove nesters.
Very good dove nesters, yeah. And also they set up in this cactus tree over there. There's a nest in the middle of the cactus as well. They've sort of found a spot where the cricket balls have made a couple of holes, and then the net goes in there as well. But thanks for the throw, Sean. That was very nice of you. It is very usual for me to do the sport straight after some sort of fluffy animal story. Usually it's a water skiing possum or something like that. But yeah, it's nice to see all the birds today.
It's great to have you on board this year as one of our chief counters, because you've been a great supporter of the Backyard Bird Count for years. I remember one of our first media engagements had was with the ABC News Breakfast, and you were co-hosting that day with Virginia Trioli, and I remember she the look of bemused shock she had on your face when she realised you were actually into birds, in that you thought it was kind of cool. I've never seen her rattled before, but she really was thrown, thinking, "What, the sport guy? He likes birds?"
Yeah, I don't know why people are surprised by it. It's my buff-headedness, I think, but you can be into sport, and I wouldn't say I'm far from an expert. I feel like I'm just on the start of my bird watching journey, Sean. But it goes all the way back. My love of birds probably goes subconsciously was there all along, because my dad he actually loved birds in the backyard so much that he built an aviary. And, yeah. He loaded it up with different birds, and he was talking about all these different species. And he said, I remember once he was contemplating getting lovebirds into the aviary, and I do remember saying, "Where are you going to get lovebirds?" And he said, "Oh, there might be at the pet shop." That was back when suburbs used to have pet shops. And I don't know, he did some sort of research and found that lovebirds don't get along with other birds. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I've heard that. I'm not that up on the aviary pecking order.
he thought they might be a bit aggressive. So anyway, but we had little quails running around, and in the end, obviously it attracted a lot of mice, so we got rid of the aviary.
Oh, right.
but we do love birds in the backyard. We never really owned a cat or a dog. Yeah. So yeah,
I was wondering, when you said lovebird, I've been, as I said in the intro, in Seaford, as did you, and still go and do the monthly survey that Birdlife Australia does for Melbourne Water, and I've actually recorded a few weird exotic birds over the years, including a peach-faced lovebird, and I was thinking, hang on, and Kennedy's bird that got out.
No, we didn't get one, but yeah, I don't know what happened to the other birds in the aviary. I guess they got released as they should have. But
right, yeah,
yeah. So no, in the Seaford Swamp, do you? I hear you talking a lot these days, but you don't promote your books as much as you should, Sean, because writing books and featuring the great suburb of the hidden secret of Seaford is something that I really enjoy. And yeah, your book, the big Twitch, is one of the best books. I featured it on my sports desk recently.
Oh yes, thanks for that. That's I'm expecting the spike in sales to my family might eat this next royalty time. Thanks.
There you go.
Paul. It's now I've got you on under not false pretenses, but I want to go the sports angle here. Usually in these sorts of things, and we weren't able to get sponsorship from Sportsbet or like that for the bird count. But
we'll
it is about
integrity. Exactly.
This is people. We rely on your donations. We're not selling our soul to corporates at Birdlife Australia, but but it is a numbers game in a sense, and every year we collect the numbers of birds that come in for the Aussie bird count. The really important figure is the reporting rate, so that we can know year on year, even when we get more and more people joining in and doing bird counts, obviously the number they see goes up, but that reporting rate will really tell us how the birds are faring, whether magpies were seen more often this year than last year and that sort of thing. But we do get a top 10, a top 20 in terms of the greatest number of birds that are seen around the country. And I just thought I'd try you out here. I come also from a racing family. My old man was a bookie, and I have the bookies board here, the Aussie Bird Count Stakes. And I was wondering if you could help me set the odds for who you think will come out on top. I've got the top 10, the top 11, and a bit of a kind of a smoky here that I'll get you to choose to set the odds. So I'm just going through. These are the top 10 birds that were seen by number across Australia last year, and the results have been the same until last year when we had can we see the glaring there, right down the bottom there, the Australian white ibis, the notorious bin chicken, that cracked the top 10 for the first time last year because of the drought, we think, because it headed in habitat in the Murray-Darling where there was no water, out into the coastal areas, the wetter areas. And that's the sort of thing that we can only confirm by having people all around Australia counting. So there certainly weren't more ibis alive last year than the previous year, but they were in the areas where people were. So what I want to get from you, if we can go through the odds, and what do you think? I'll see if this is a traditional bookie board here. Really probably should have rehearsed this on camera. Every year we've had the rainbow lorikeet at number 1, and last year almost twice as many were seen as any other bird. So I've got it in the red, which is the odds on. Are you happy with that? 3-1 on it will be.
I think it's got to stay there at Lockie Neal Brownlow medal odds.
Yes.
At 31 votes, 10 best on grounds, per 17 games. The rainbow lorikeet seems like it's a Lockie Neal of the competition this year.
Lock it in, Lockie Neal.
the other sporting comparison I could make just by looking at the last 3 years, 19, 18, 17, I've got the lists here, is that the rainbow lorikeet, the noisy miner, and the Australian magpie are really the big three, aren't they? They're your Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal. Hard to knock them off, although we're looking, I guess, in that list for some sort of bolter. What was the number on the noisy miner compared to the magpie? Was there much in that? Can we read anything in the odds there?
Well, in Victoria, magpie was ahead of noisy miner.
Yeah.
It was Queensland really that saw noisy miner go over the line. It wasn't much. It was I don't have them up at the moment. I can't access them, but it was I think it was just a few thousand, as 140,000 to 139,000.
Okay, so
certainly more people saw magpies, but when you see a magpie, it's usually in pairs, whereas noisy miners can be in those big flocks, even those super colonies of up to up to 20 or 30 birds. So
yeah, okay.
yeah,
Well, I
it's a
think
bit easy.
you could probably choose the odds there and put them the same. I reckon maybe the magpie.
Okay, we've got
anecdotally speaking, I have seen more people riding their bikes with the little plastic spikes on their helmet, which indicate that the magpies are about again.
Okay, all right. So
good
it's a
number.
good magpie. All right, we'll have them at 3 to 1. I reckon that's a good
3
one.
to 1 each. Yes.
The fourth bird, we've got the sulphur-crested cockatoo.
Yeah, there's your Andy Murray. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll put it just what do you reckon? Just behind the just behind the two second favourites.
Just in behind, yeah, maybe $4, $5.
Okay, all right. Let's do 9 to 2, $4.50 there, and it's close relative. The Galar came in at number 5. What's your feel?
Well, the Galar seems to be changing places with the house sparrow, doesn't it? Because in 2018, the house sparrow was number 5 on the
yeah, that's right,
on the countdown, on the Casey Kasem countdown. So
and galars are an inland bird, so maybe they hit the coast last year. It's a bit wetter this year. They might have headed back.
Yeah,
where less people are.
Yeah, not many people are allowed to go to the coast. So maybe the house sparrow might bob up.
Okay.
More likely to regain its 5th billing.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll put the house sparrow in above the galar in terms of.
Yep.
Put it 6 to 1. Galar 8 to 1. Next on the list, we've got the old gull, the silver gull.
Silver gull, yeah. Well known to this region here. If you just wander down from where you used to live down to the Milk Bar, you'd see the silver gulls bullying the wood ducks in Cananook Creek. And, any time a little kid comes over to give to feed the ducks, it lasts about 30 seconds because the silver gull moves in. Well, what do we say about the silver gull? They've had a good year, haven't they?
I think that looks like it. I actually had one fly over on my bird count here, which I normally don't get. So if local forms, anything to go by.
I'm besieged by seagulls here. So
okay, so we'll bring it in, shorten the odds.
I reckon shorten the odds on the silver gull. Seems like it's
okay. So I've got it 8 to 1.
A lot of people staying close to home and eating fish and chips more often than not. So
true. Yes,
that's got to do something for numbers.
Indeed.
as well as the noise pollution.
Yeah. The next one is the number 8 bird, the common myna last year, or Indian myna, as a lot of people know it. Interestingly,
it gets a bad rap, doesn't it?
It does, but interestingly, it's looking like the figures we're getting in previous years is the numbers aren't increasing, if not they're slightly decreasing in Victoria. Yeah. But they're still expanding as they're moving up the coast and moving into parts of New South Wales and Queensland. So, feel like we need Anthony Green in to talk about the various booths around the country. But
well, all we need to know is your voting patterns. Do we get a good buy-in from New South Wales compared to Victoria? I suspect the Victorians are more prolific in their voting.
Well, actually, last year the Victorians were a bit slack. So if you're from Victoria, we want to the turnout was low. Queensland had the highest per capita turnout. They love their birds in Queensland. So,
is the common myna heading up to Queensland?
Yeah, it's expanding in a lot of areas in southeast Queensland. So
why do we call it the common myna instead of the Indian myna? Is that an old? Is it a rather offensive name, or what did they change that for?
Basically, because there's about 8 species of myna that occur in India. So in India itself, it's the common myna, although it's actually in decline in a lot of agricultural areas in India. Yeah. So it's like calling, it would be like calling a budgie an Australian parrot.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot more. So yeah.
Yep. Righto. Yep.
Okay. So okay, I'm going to bring the odds down on the common myna. Then we have the lovely old welcome swallow. That's our 9th bird last year. What do you think its chances are this year, Paul?
I haven't seen too many swallows around my place. So where do the swallows hang out?
Actually, wetlands is a good spot. This is the time of year when they are breeding, so they tend to come and they mainly nest more under the eaves of roofs on verandas than they do out in the wild. So that's why they're a well-represented species in urban areas.
From memory, I remember seeing a lot of swallows when I was a kid, and I'm in the same suburb, by the way. I'm still in Seaford, so I remember seeing many more when I was a kid. Would it have changed at all, or just that I've sort of moved houses?
No, I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. The certainly from Birdlife Australia's work with our State of Australia Birds, which monitors surveys over 15 years, we monitored. We collected data on about 400,000 surveys over that time, and the aerial insects in the air on the wing, like welcome swallows, across the board, they were all declining in numbers, which is a real concern. They're a bird we often don't think about, those birds that feed in the air, but they rely on the habitat on the ground to provide the insects that fly up into the air. And unfortunately, swallows, and particularly birds like rainbow bee eaters and the swifts were all declining. So, but luckily that we still do get the welcome swallow in the urban areas.
And they've got a good name, the welcome swallow. Is there any way that birds can put in a protest on the names they're given? You'd rather be called a welcome swallow than a noisy miner, wouldn't you?
Yeah, true. It's a bit more user friendly.
I guess the noisy miners can quieten it down a little bit.
Yeah, and now we've got number 10 from last year and number 11, which is displaced, the red wattlebird. So we got the ibis and the wattlebird. What do you feel? What do you feel in your bones on these?
On your explanation before, I suspect the ibis don't need to go into the populated areas. Then we might see a return of the red wattlebird.
Okay.
That's just going on what you're saying. So I'll blame you if it doesn't happen. My experience with the ibis is from being a news reporter in Brisbane, where every year, and people who watch the news a lot understand that we do go through cycles of stories. Every year I had to go into the middle of Brisbane, get some shots of the ibis, and vox pop people who say that they don't want them in the middle of Brisbane anymore. But I quite like them, actually. They're a very interesting looking bird. But
they divide opinion, but I'm a big fan. I think they're great.
Yeah, and really, if they want some scraps, they get after it, don't they? So why are we having a go on them? But I think the red wattlebird, not knowing much about that particular species, is going to sneak back in the top 10, unless the crested pigeon makes a dash. And,
that's true. That's been on the fringes, so yeah.
Might get up
there.
So
we'll put that in. We'll put crested pigeon in as our smoky.
Let's do that.
And I'll get it in there. Yep. Okay. I'm just writing that down, and we'll get that up on the bookie boards. Well, thank you, Paul. It's been a delight to have you on for your support.
Thanks,
and
John.
bringing all that bird knowledge to us.
Pleased to offer no insight, but I'm as curious as anyone else, and ready for a good bird count. It should be good fun, and we'll stay across it at this place.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, PK, and happy birding.
See you, mate. Thanks, Sean.
See you later. And that's the last of our guests. We're just going to we'll just play you one more video, and then we will head off. Head to you to answer your questions. Okay, here we go.
Hi, my name is Jasper, and I want to say Tony Throgman. Hi, my name's Dakota, and I really want to say a lorikeet. My name's James, and I want to say a pelican. I'm Lily, and I would like to see a very bright coloured bird. I'm Bethany, and I want to see a magpie. I'm Angus, and I want to see a Jim Bob bird.
And I'd like to thank the kids from Year 2 at Beaumaris North Primary School for supplying the voices and telling us what birds they wanted to see. And that's a great way to end because on the kids, because the Aussie Backyard Bird Count is something that we've found over the years people really enjoy doing with their kids or their grandkids. It's a great way it's almost perfect way to harness the two things kids love, that innate curiosity for the natural world, but also because it's an app and it's on a phone, it has that digital native feel to it. So why don't you find it, especially now that we're able to move around a bit more and maybe see your grandchildren, if you're out there taking them out and doing a bird count, they love the game aspect of it, adding the birds in, and also they get to learn about birds and get to love them just as we do. So thank you very much for hanging in there, everybody, for this epic broadcast that we've had. I hope you've joined in when you could, and maybe some people have been with us the whole time. I've got Joe trying to message me, but I can't read the message, so I have to be on a text. We can, I'm just trying to think if there are some questions that I can answer. That's, if there's any outstanding ones. I haven't been able to see them myself here. Here we go. Sorry, just as we all grind to an end. Okay, if there's any questions from the audience, anybody that's watching us now that you would like answered, we'll have a crack in the last 5 minutes or so to see if we can answer them. So I'm waiting on I'll just scroll through while we wait for more questions to come up. And I can see here there's a question. One of the things was people were asking, if you hear a bird, can you count it? Well, absolutely. If you're sure of the bird's call, for many birds, what's the sounds they make are just as distinctive as any feathering that they have, any particular plumage. So as long as you do know the call, and there are some really good apps bird apps that will tell you what the bird is. Unfortunately, we don't have in Australia yet a Shazam for birds where you can record the call and it will tell you what you're hearing. Also on the Birds in Backyards website, you can, with a lot of the species profiles, there is also the sound of the bird that you can play to see what it is. Also, just wanting to wrap up, we get a lot of joy out of doing the backyard bird count, a lot of joy from our birds, but it is really important to think about how your enjoyment of those birds can impact on the birds. So when you're doing your bird count, it's really important to follow ethical bird watching guidelines. And we have those on the Birdlife website, and there's also in the backyard bird count website. And the thing is to just try and keep your presence as minimal in terms of disturbing the birds. It might seem like common sense, but often people get excited and don't think about what they're doing and get carried away. So if you have any nesting birds around, especially birds that aren't used to you being there, please don't get too close to the nest. Back off right away, because you don't want birds abandoning even temporarily the nest for the eggs and the vulnerable chicks in the nest, where they can be vulnerable to predation by other birds or by cats. And also the temperature of the eggs can plummet if the birds go off, or if it's a hot day, it can rise. So if you do see a nest, back right away and don't spend too much time around the nest. There are really canny predator birds like ravens and currawongs and butcher birds, and they can follow you and they can watch where you're looking at. And if you pay undue attention to a nest site, that's going to alert them to the fact that there's something interesting there, and it can actually often spell doom for the chicks in the nest. So that's probably the most important thing. And also, if you're considering the birds when you were bird watching, when you were doing your counts, then you're going to get a better experience as well, because if you're yelling, making noises, pointing vigorously at things, they think you're throwing things or trying to maybe shoot a weapon at them, that sort of thing. The birds are going to be more edgy, more cagey, and not come closer. So it's really important for the experience of the bird that your presence isn't disturbing it, but also it enhances your experience when you practice ethical birding, which is always, and we can't stress this enough at Birdlife Australia, always put the welfare of the bird above the pleasure that you'll be getting from seeing that bird. That's a really important message that would be a great one to end up with. Looking at Joe, do we have any other outstanding questions there? We have, what is the lifespan of a plover? Now, that's an interesting one. Thanks, Robin. We have, when we talk about plovers, that's a suite of shorebirds, some called plovers, some called dotterel, some called lapwings. So it depends on which. But we certainly know in terms of the hooded plover, which is an endangered coastal bird that our beach nesting birds team have been studying and protecting for years, and in Victoria and South Australia have seen their numbers of this delicate beach nesting bird reverse the downward trend because of the work we've done with our volunteers, and those bird numbers are now rising, and the plovers are hatching more chicks successfully than they were 10, 15 years ago due to the work of our volunteers. And those hooded plovers are really fascinating birds. The research team have banded many of those birds, especially in Victoria, and they've been able to identify those birds years down the track through the leg flags or leg bands that they have. And some of those birds have been identified. I feel like I read recently there was one bird that was banded 16 years ago and it's still successfully nesting. So a lot of our birds breed for a long, live for quite a bit longer than you would expect. Even our small birds like fairy wrens the banding retraps have shown some birds can live for 10 years or so, which is amazing for such a small, little, vulnerable bird. So thanks for that. And that was Robin. And let's see if we can do one more question. Marcus has got a wildlife camera watching bird baths on our off-grid property. Can I submit all of our reports at the end of the week when I pick up the camera cards? Well, I suppose you could, Marcus. I don't think we've had that question before. Certainly, you could do a 20-minute count of what turns up in any 20-minute period on your bird bath. I don't see any problem with that. In terms of personal bird watching, I wouldn't be adding it to my list of what I've seen, but I might have a separate list of birds I've recorded on my remote sensing cameras. But that's a fantastic way, and we know from these cameras that have been placed at water points and other things, we're learning so much about the lives of our backyard birds and elsewhere in the bush when we do set up those cameras. So that's quite a nifty idea, and I think we'd be very happy to accept those counts from your cameras, Marcus. And people, remember, you've got till Sunday. Bird Week finishes on Sunday, so you can keep counting until Sunday. And I just remembered I meant to follow how we were going throughout the day to see what the numbers were doing. It was in terms of how many surveys and how many birds. I'll just check in quickly to see how much it's increased. I'm going to have to get out. When we started this broadcast, we had 12,744 backyard bird lists already submitted, and we'd counted collectively 394,000. I'll just refresh my screen, and that should tell me what we're up to now, which will be fantastic. Maybe all of you have been watching us for the last few hours, but we're now up to 15,752 checklists submitted, and that's 488,000 birds. So just in the first half of the first day, we've almost counted 500,000 birds. It's putting us well on our way to our target of over 4 million birds. So that is a great spot to end. Thank you, everybody who's joined us. And I'd like to also thank all of our guests today, all of our chief counters who've just done such a tremendous job checking in with us and have done such great things promoting the Aussie Backyard Bird Count. And you could sense the palpable sense of enjoyment and passion that came through a lot of our guests. And we're so privileged to have them supporting us. And we're so privileged to have so many people join in and help us with the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, because as people have said, you can't love something until you know about it, and you can't protect it until you know about it. And this event has been such a brilliant way of spreading the word, celebrating our birds, the incredible birds we have in Australia, and celebrating what they bring into our lives. And then by you doing your counts, sharing them with us at Birdlife Australia, we're able to collate all that information and use it in our conservation programs as we go ahead, and we try and work out how we stop the declines, reverse the declines of Australia's birds. And it's such an important job to do. And we know this year, we've been told so many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have really responded in such a major positive way to having Australia's birds all around them. Let's keep it that way. Get out there, enjoy this week. And I'm going to get out now. I've been looking out the window. I'm itching to do another count myself. So happy counting, everybody, and thanks for joining us, and enjoy your birds.